Hi everyone. In this lecture, we are going to talk about few default methods which are present by default in every class. Okay, so these methods are known as one of these methods is constructor that we will talk about, and there is a copy constructor, there is a copy assignment operator, and also there is a destructor as well. So we are going to talk about all of them one by one, and for this video, we will focus on constructor only. Okay, so we'll talk about what is this method constructor, why it is helpful, and how we can use it or modify it. So basically, constructor is a special method whose name is same as the class name. This method is responsible for constructing the object. Okay, so right now we have not called constructor. We have not seen how the constructor is called, but it is called in the code that we have written. Okay, so the role of the constructor is in constructing the object. Okay, and it is called automatically when the object is created. Okay, so let me show you. Okay, so memory allocation also happens when this constructor is called, and constructor is called only once for each object. So each object, uh, so like we saw these methods, set, selling price, they can be called multiple times, but constructor is a special method whose name is same as the class name. So by default, this constructor exists. Okay, so this piece of code was there but it was hidden. Okay, so this is how the constructor looks like. So let me show you constructor. Let me show you cout inside constructor. So we have not called this method, but it is called automatically at line number 47. Okay, so now we have written some print statement inside this. So what we will see, we'll see that you can see inside constructor is getting printed because this method is getting called automatically. Okay, now since this method is getting called automatically, we can use it to do some work as well. Okay, so maybe let us make another constructor. This constructor is going to accept parameters, let's say id, char, name, okay, and maybe mrp and int selling price. What we can do, we can say id equal to id. So we can initialize the object using this constructor, but now there is one problem. Here it is not clear which id is which one. Okay, so what we have, each class has a hidden has a special property which is known as this. So I want to refer this particular id, so I will write this id should be equal to id. So basically this id goes here and this id comes here. What is this? So this is a special pointer which points to the current object. Okay, so this basically points to the current object. So what we will do, if the attributes are same, for example, let's say this is n, then we don't need this for this property. Okay, so we can say name equal to n, but this would be wrong. We actually don't want to copy the address, we actually want to copy the array. So we will use a method string copy from n, copy all the array into the name. Okay, and we can say this arrow id equal to id, and this arrow mrp equal to mrp, this arrow selling price equal to selling price. Okay, so you may also ask me about this arrow operator, what this operator is. So this is a pointer, okay, and this is a object. So this points to this object, and let's say it has some property. Let's say there is some property x. If you want to refer this property, there are two ways. One way is you first get the object using this pointer, using the dereference operator, and then you write x. The other way is using the arrow notation. So this arrow x basically means we are talking about this x property of this object. Okay, so we are doing this arrow mrp equal to mrp, this arrow selling price equal to selling price. Okay, so now what we can do, we have done something which is known as constructor overloading. Okay, that means we have defined two constructors, two methods which have the same name, and that's why this concept is known as overloading, but only one of them will get called. Okay, so now if you see, if I run this code and if I do product camera, then the first constructor is going to get called. Okay, and you can see we are inside this particular constructor. But if I initialize this camera like this and I pass in some ID, let's say 101 is the ID, and then maybe the name is, let's say, Sony, or let's say GoPro 08 09, and maybe then I can say MRP is 28,000 and maybe selling price is 26,000. Okay, so okay, and maybe now we can just comment out this code. This is not required, and we can simply do the MRP and the selling price. Okay, and okay, let's see. So let's build the code. So okay, we have a warning. This warning can be ignored. So you can see MRP is set to 28,000 and selling price is set to 26,000. So this is happening because of the parameterized constructor that we have written. Okay, so this is the constructor with parameters, and this is where the constructor comes very useful. So we will use this parameterized constructor to do the initialization of the object that we want to create. So I hope you understood the concept of defining the constructor, and it is getting called automatically when the object is created, and for each object it can be called only once. So I hope these concepts are clear, and that's all for this lecture.